America's last space shuttle flew into space in 2011. And after that last space shuttle went to space, NASA closed down the space shuttle program. So we applied for various artifacts in the program that NASA made available to schools. Well, we did a little bit better than that. So not only do we have a tile from the actual space shuttle and pieces of an actual spacesuit, but we actually have very large pieces of the actual shuttle. In fact, we have a space shuttle main engine nozzle. And that big nozzle, the reason it's so important, not only was it used on the space shuttle program, but it's also going to be used in NASA's next generation vehicle, which is called the Space Launch System. So we have a piece of NASA's past, but we also have a piece of NASA's exploration future sitting in our exhibit gallery. The only places you will see space shuttle main engine nozzles are at NASA facilities, the Smithsonian, and right here at CocaCola Space Science Center. Now, another piece came available about within the last year, and we applied for that piece. And we had no concept that we would ever be chosen for this piece, because you see, the piece we applied for it's very big and it's very important. But amazingly, just within the last few months, we found out that that artifact has actually been donated to us. Well, in the mid-1970s, when NASA was developing the space shuttle program and system, they didn't want to build a full-sized model because this thing stood almost 200 feet tall. And so what they had to do is they had to build scale models of this. Well, the largest scale model, which is really an engineering prototype that they ever built of this particular stack, was 1/4 the size of the actual space shuttle, which means from tip to tail, it was about 50 feet long, about 48 feet long, which means they had to scale down all the little screws and fasteners, all of the hinges for the cargo bay doors, all the joints that connected the solid rocket boosters to the main tank, that connected the shuttle to the main tank. All of these things had to be scaled down, not only in size, but they also had to be scaled down in mass, but yet keep the same tensile strength and dynamic properties that the actual materials had. That was a very complex engineering maneuver, so they had to put it through this kind of testing. The other thing to remember was, unlike the previous rockets that NASA launched, they launched those unpiloted. In other words, they always tested their rockets with no one on board, just to make sure everything was functioning. Then they put actual astronauts on board. They could not do that with Space Shuttle. So the first time Space Shuttle flew, there were people on board. So they had to get it right the first time. That's what made this dynamic model, this engineering prototype, so critically important. That made this a very, very important piece of the engineering process for Space Shuttle. Well, after they were done, they rolled all this thing into a warehouse. And eventually, the orbiter, the part that looks like a space plane, that went to Canada, and that orbiter hung in the Calgary International Airport for about 14 years. So they went through a selection process to see who could house these materials and yet still keep and maintain the integrity of what they were to the space shuttle program. We put our application in, and because we're part of a university, and because we talked about how we would incorporate this with the engineering mission to train our engineers here at Columbus State and our future astrophysicists here at Columbus State, those were in main consideration for us receiving this artifact. And we found out just a few months ago that the entire stack, the space shuttle, the external tank, which is 38 feet long, the solid rocket boosters, all of this is coming to Columbus and will come and be on display at Columbus State University's CocaCola Space Science Center. The Science Center is going to have to enclose the front part of our building. Because the process moved kind of fast for us to get this thing, we actually already have the pieces of the quarter scale space shuttle and tank and solid rocket boosters in town. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to go on display soon, because this process has only been going on for a few months, so we can't move that fast. We have to go through a process where we have to raise the funds, we have to have an architectural plan, and then of course it has to actually be constructed. We're looking somewhere between 2 and 3 years for that entire process to take place. And so that space shuttle quarter scale will be on display somewhere around 3 years from now. And it is really an honor and an amazing opportunity for us to be able to put this on display here at Columbus State.